All right, let's get straight to it. It's going to take only a few moments to teach you how to use Lightroom to create a full bleed collage in the variety that you see here. This is over 100 wedding images that I just chose from a catalog to practice this technique on. And this is a great way for you to present a lot of images in a really small space. It's pretty visually stunning for people to be drawn in by the intricacy of all the small photos, for them to inspect the image in just kind of a new creative way. Maybe you can use it on Instagram or your website. In this case, I was using it for a full bleed photo for a client wedding guide that I am creating. And so you see there I have over 100 ring shots in a full bleed photo. So let me show you how to do this right quick. You're going to want to launch Lightroom. Now you can take any variety of images that you want. For this quick tutorial, I have 104 ring shots. So the ring shots that you saw from that full bleed image in that wedding guide. I have those selected here. I'm going to go to, once those are selected, Command A, go to Print. Now, what you see here is a finished product. Let me work backwards here and show you how this goes. Before you get too excited, what you're going to want to do is make sure that you have your template size set to whatever purpose that you need it for. In my case, I need a 3:4 ratio piece of paper, or a template, if you will. Maybe you're working in a 4x6, 5x7, 8x10. You can set your own custom template by going to Page Setup, clicking Paper Size, Manage Custom Sizes, and here you will click Add. I'm going to title this Sample, and you can see here where I've experimented with some other ratios, and you're going to tell it what ratio you want, a 8:12, for example, and you're going to change the margins later, but if you want to go ahead and set those to 0 here, you're welcome to, and there you go. And we're going to tell it to use an 8:12. Now I don't want an 8:12, but in this case I was using that to show you how to set up your own custom template. I'm actually going to use the 3:4 ratio. You're going to want to make sure Zoom to Fill is selected. These other three are going to be unselected. Your margins, if you don't, this is what it looks like if you don't have them set to 0, okay? So set your margins to 0. That gives you the full bleed image where the images go all the way to the edge. Now, depending on the number of images that you have, your rows and columns are going to change. We'll come back to that in a few moments. Another thing you're going to want to make sure that you have the cell spacing, vertical and horizontal, need to be pulled to 0 so that the images fit snugly against one another. And then we'll work with more export settings here in a few moments. I'm going to do a quick scroll down the right side here so you can see the other selections that I have made. And we'll talk more about this print job here in a few moments. But first, you're going to want to spend the time to get your collage the way you want it to look. And you're going to do that by experimenting with the column and rows ratios, okay? So depending on how many images you have preloaded and selected in your film strip will determine how many will fit on a page. And so you can experiment with that. So it shows right here I have 2 pages. That means I had some images that got knocked over to the second page, okay? So I have a whole strip that did not make it onto my first page. So that tells me that I need to add an extra row. So I'm going to go from 12 to 13. And you're going to have to experiment with this to get the visual layout that you want. And so if you start to adjust these, it's going to make the images shorter, wider. I kind of like that right there. That's 10:9. So that's only 90 images. There's 100 images. So that means 4 images got knocked off onto my second page. Boom, there they are. But in this case, I like the ratio of the images on the screen. They're not too squishy. They didn't get boxed out. They're not squares. Not too much of the rings got knocked out of the frames. I really, really like this. So probably of all the times I've practiced this for this tutorial, this is actually my favorite so far. So I'm going with this 10:10 columns and rows. Cell spacing is set to 0, and the cell size is pushed all the way to the right, because if I move the cell size all the way to the left, that's the effect that I get, and that is not what I want. All right, so get ready to export this. It's very important that you set your file resolution to a high enough number for whatever purpose that you are using this. I did this earlier and had it set to 300, and I will show you a side-by-side comparison of 300, 600, and 1200 resolution here in a few moments. And I promise you, it's going to convince you that you're going to want to use a higher PPI on your export settings. In this case, I'm going to keep it at 1200 from my experimentation. I know that that is a nice export setting for what I need. JPEG quality 100, of course, I want the highest quality output. And the rest of these things I don't really mess with because I'm not actually printing the photo. Now, how do I get to export a photo and not print? How do I get it to export a digital file and not to a printer? Click right here. If this is the first time that you're doing this, most likely underneath the print job module, you're going to see printer. You need to change that to JPEG file. Then click print to file. I'm going to set this on my desktop. I'm going to call this IG sample 4, and it's going to put it on my desktop. Click save. Let that export. All right, we should be able to go view that now. Let me minimize Lightroom. Now that is going to be over here. It put it in its own folder, IG sample 4. We launch the image, and there it is. Now I'm going to zoom into this so you can see how well the integrity of the images has been maintained across all 100 images that ended up on this full bleed photo. And you see how they fit snugly together. And this is going to look really nice in my client guide as a creative way of presenting a lot of images at a single time. All right, before we go, I do need to show you this, a side-by-side comparison of various PPIs for the export settings and why you're going to want to select a high PPI rate on that print module. All right, I have 3 different versions here, sample 2, sample 1. Now let me back these out and line them up here. All right, this is a side-by-side test to show you what happens when you do not export your images from this print module at a high PPI and why you're going to want to select a high PPI. So on the far right, I'm going to zoom into all of these images at the same magnification. So I'm going to let's zoom in 6 times to each one. Go to the middle one, and then the last one. Now, let's find a spot here that we can view. All right, let's do this. Let's scroll all these over so you're seeing the same image side by side. And you can already tell this one on the far right is far more pixelated than the others. So this one on the far right was exported at 300 PPI. The one in the middle, IG sample 2, was exported at 600 PPI, and this last one was exported at 1200 PPI. So you see that when we zoom in at the same rate with all 3, the variety of visual acuity that you get for the images and why you are going to want to export in those export settings at a high PPI. I hope that's super helpful for you. I can't wait to see what you come up with for your own purposes, and that you may find a new way. I know people are always competing with creative ways to display their imagery on their websites. In my case, I'm looking for a print guide on Instagram stories and just a way to capture. I can see how a photographer might use this to export all of the finished photos from a photo shoot and be able to provide this cool snapshot for their clients. You can send an image like this over to your clients, and your clients would probably love to have all of their images in a single image that they can then share and help draw attention to your work through their social medias as well. Before we go, I'm going to show you how I'm using this in my print guide. Let me zoom out here just a little bit. So on one of the pages, I just wanted to add this as a visual element. I'm going to delete that version because I'm more pleased with the version that we just worked on in this tutorial. I'm going to go to upload files. There it is. Boom. Then I'm going to drop it on here as a full bleed image, and it's ready to go with my client guide page. And I'll situate it somewhere in this booklet in a way that it fits best. And let's just talk about the philosophical notion behind why an image like this is attractive to use, either digitally or in print. What does this do for the viewer it sells the message, it sends the message immediately. Okay, this photographer has a lot of experience. Look at all the variety, the creative variety that this person has arranged these rings in order to accomplish this creative task during any given wedding. And so, without saying any words, it sells a very strong message to the viewer of the experience level, the expertise, the creativity, just as an overall creative display of the wedding work that will benefit you. And they know that it's going to benefit them and that they're going to be well taken care of and that you are a consistent photographer. And so that's just one way that you can use this full bleed image collage created in Lightroom. I hope you enjoyed that. If you use this, don't be shy to tag me, share with me, tag me on your Instagram stories. Show me the creative ways that you figured out how to use this, and happy shooting. Peace.